don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
You're damn right it matters. Herm Edwards, you are so right. Every time we play that, you are dead on, man. No question. When the Red Wings play as impressive as they did last night, it should matter. And it should matter to all of us. Welcome on a Friday, everybody. Glad you're with us on X's and BrO's throughout the great state of Michigan. I'm Matt Shepard. We are here Monday through Friday from 6 until 9. And going into the game last night in Edmonton, I thought to myself, not going to happen. Alex Lyon in net, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, Evan Bouchard. I oftentimes go into games thinking, who's ever got that best roster, when they're on their game, Edmonton had won 3 in a row, Detroit had won 3 in a row. When they're on their game, other team wins. Better team wins. Edmonton jumps out to a 2-0 lead. Won on the power play so you could understand it. I thought, next goal, I don't believe in the hardest comeback is when you're 3 goals down. 2 goals isn't easy either, you know. Anyway, I thought it's over unless they get the next goal. And boom, Michael Rasmussen with a nice tip-in goal in front of the net. And I thought, that's what you expect from that dude. That dude's a first-round draft pick. Not that I was expecting a 40-goal season every year from him, but I do expect more of a presence. So he gives you that last night. Good for them. 2-1. Then, what a beautiful pass by Marco Kasper up the wall. Dylan Larkin pots it to tie it at 2. Nice. Okay. I'm feeling something here. And I'm sure you were too. Alex Lyon, really good in net. Ends up 45 saves, which the best were actually in the shootout. Yeah, it goes to a shootout. Detroit wins it. Raymond and Larkin score in the shootout. Nugent-Hopkins and McDavid stoned by Alex Lyon in the shootout. Detroit wins it 3-2. Ironically enough, the 2 games these 2 teams have played against one another, both going to overtime, one to a shootout, the other one decided in OT, both ending in 3-2 scores. Edmonton wins the first one during the season. Detroit wins the second one. Good for them. Detroit's winning streak now at 4. It changes things, doesn't it? Don't you think when you beat a good team, when your team, whatever team it may be, when your team beats a good team, there is a different vibe about it. Let's look at a couple examples this year. Michigan football was not good enough for you. When they beat Ohio State, you had a completely different mood. Maybe there's a part of you and your friends that were like, man, if they had just played this well earlier this season, they wouldn't have lost to Illinois. They wouldn't have lost to Indiana. Perhaps they wouldn't have lost to Texas. Yes, they would have. There are other situations, but overall, that might have been the mindset. Michigan State basketball. The win over North Carolina, though maybe not as impressive now as back then, but the win over North Carolina probably changed your mood a little bit about them. Pistons beat the Lakers earlier this year. Okay. You beat Anthony Davis, and you beat LeBron James, and you beat Bronny James. Oh, never mind. That makes you feel pretty good, right? This win over a team that was tied in the Pacific Division with Las Vegas, that has the best player on earth, Connor McDavid, perhaps the second best player, Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews in the debate. But listen, Leon Draisaitl's in that conversation. That makes you feel pretty damn good. Yeah, it does me. It gives me some hope. No question. Good win for the Wings last night. Ottawa beat Washington 5-4. I'm not going down an NHL scoreboard for you, but I do think it's important to let you know that Alexander Ovechkin scored again last night. I think he's got 23 on the year. We've talked a lot about LeBron James being a guy who is bionic. He does things at age 40 that have never been done before. You're supposed to look older as you get older. He does not, right? I mean, I suppose Marc-Andre Fleury winning last night from Minnesota in a shutout, and he's over 40 years old, is pretty damn good too, don't you think? He's the only goalie in history to boast a shutout as a teenager and boast a shutout as a 40-year-old plus. So that's pretty impressive, don't you think? Well, Alexander Ovechkin, why don't we talk about him in the same reverence? Just wondering. Why is it strictly about LeBron James? Why is that it? Is it because Ovechkin's 39 and not quite 40? He's got more gray in the beard than LeBron James does. 23 goals now on the season. 37 points now on the season. And for his career, Alexander Ovechkin, and I don't know if you want him to break the record or not, but 876 career goals. So he is now 19 away from passing Wayne Gretzky for most goals in history. I would also add this. At age 39, like we love what Lucas Raymond does. That's our poll question. Love what Dylan Larkin does. Neither one of them even close to where Alexander Ovechkin, in terms of age, Alexander Ovechkin's 11th in the league this year in goals scored. I'm not going to lie. I don't want him to break the record, but I think a lot of people do because they want to see history. And I get that. Cade Cunningham. Did he make history? Not necessarily, but he's a deserved all-star. There's no question about that. He becomes the first Piston since Blake Griffin back in 2019 to earn the all-star nod. He's a reserve. He's averaging 25 points, 9 assists, 6.5 boards. Good for him. He should be there. I'm not happy just because he's a Piston. I'm happy because it's deserved. Now, there are a number of guys. Anytime you get to this situation as an all-star, you're going to have quote-unquote snubs. You're going to have it in every single sport. There's a couple that are glaring that we will get to here on X's and Bros. The NFL Network is reporting that former Stanford head coach David Shaw is the Lions' new passing coordinator. And former Tiger Max Scherzer has signed a contract. At the age of 40, he is now a Toronto Blue Jay. 1 year, $15.5 million. Last year, brutal. It's a brutal year for him. 9 starts, 2-4, ERA of about 4. Wasn't healthy. It's funny. I heard somebody say yesterday, the 2-time World Series champ, Max Scherzer, a World Series with Washington. He was vital in that. World Series with Texas, not so much. Here's our poll question. That's a pretty good rotation, by the way. So he's not going to be in the top 4. You have Kevin Gausman. You have Chris Bassett. You have Jose Barrios. You have Bowden Francis, who was really good at the end of the year last year. And now you've got Max Scherzer, if he's a 5 or a 6. I suppose it's not a bad option at 5 or 6. But look, if I'm going to bitch about the signing of Alex Cobb because he was injured and possibly thinking about retirement, I got to complain about this. $15.5 million for Max Scherzer at age 40 who's breaking down. Here's our poll question. We have one for you every single day. Is it time to admit that Lucas Raymond is the Red Wings' best player? Yes or no? Vote as often as you like. And we'll give you the results on Monday. Quick timeout. Back with plenty here on X's and Bros. Stay with us.
There's a new player in town. Hi, I'm Herman Moore.
first. But yeah, it just feels good. Keep the win streak alive here, and just get a good day tomorrow and just start preparing for the next one. We've been resilient lately, and when you get that attitude and you believe that you can win in any circumstance, it's a powerful thing. So we have to hold on to that and foster that. Just keep chugging forward and enjoy it for a little bit, and then move on.
Red Wings a 3-2 winner last night in Edmonton. Really impressive. You know what? Here's some of the statistics that we get wrapped up in are, come on, it's a little ridiculous, quite honestly. I know we love to play with numbers when it comes to sports because it supports our argument. I'm not saying it's not worthy. Of course it is. It's really important. I just brought up a ton of numbers. So I think a lot of them are valid. I mean, some of the ones that go hidden, the ones we don't always pay attention to, the ones that we should be paying attention to, but we gloss over. When I ask you to look at a hockey stat sheet, where do your eyes go? Mine go to goals, assists, plus minus. Dylan Larkin last night had 10 shots on net. That's putting pressure on the opposition. I know. How many times did he score? Well, he scored once during regulation. Stuart Skinner, the goalie for Edmonton, faced 34 shots the entire night. Dylan Larkin had 10. And don't look at it like, 1 for 10. What a terrible percentage. These are the shots you've got to take. How many times in the past, or how many times even right now, where you're watching a game with your buddies and you're going to shoot the puck? You can't score if you don't shoot the puck. Dylan Larkin had 10 shots. So did Leon Draisaitl, by the way. Dylan Larkin also had 30 shifts. 30 shifts in that game. Ben Sherratt had 30 shifts as well. Nobody else, even for Edmonton. Like if I'm Edmonton's coach, I'm playing Connor McDavid as much as I possibly can. I think he's the best player in the world. I think he's one of the most gifted skaters I have ever seen. Now, he did play a ton. It doesn't matter the shifts. It matters the time on the ice. And Connor McDavid had almost 26 minutes of ice time. But still, 30 shifts with Dylan Larkin as Detroit's captain. Really impressive, as was the 3-2 win over Edmonton last night. Larkin scores, and so does Rasmussen in regulation. And then in the shootout, it's Raymond and Larkin with goals as well. Larkin now with 22 on the season. It's a really nice win for Detroit. You know, I think there is there definitely was a time when Derek Lalonde was the head coach. There's no way you thought Detroit was reaching the playoffs. Before the season, yes. Before the season, I think most hockey fans felt like the Red Wings had enough talent to challenge for a playoff spot. And that's, I think, pretty evident from last year. Last year, tied with Washington for points enough to get in the playoffs, but Washington won the tiebreak. Detroit right now, 55 points. And if you look at the conference, if you wanted to look at the playoffs, Detroit is in. So that's a good thing. Love that. You're looking at Washington, who lost last night by a goal to Ottawa. And you got Carolina, you got New Jersey, you got Florida. Okay, so there is an opportunity here for Detroit, and Florida's really good, man. I mean, they continue to impress. Toronto's had a nice year. Good friend of mine said, watch out for a team like Ottawa, and Ottawa has impressed as well. So Detroit trailing Boston by a point. They wouldn't be in. My apologies. I said they'd be in. They wouldn't be in, but they're nipping at the heels. They're right there. Okay, a point back or so. And I love the way they're playing hockey right now. It is. I mean, when they went through the 7-game winning streak, I think that reinforced everybody's belief. Then they hit a little bit of snag, losing 3 of 4. Now they've won 4 in a row. I get it. Sometimes it's a roller coaster. Not every team is going to cruise to what you hope will be enough points to reach the playoffs, to get enough wins to reach the playoffs. But you got to like the way they're playing and the way Todd McClellan has handled this team, not just on the wins overall and not just on the power play. Their penalty kill has been a lot better, and I mean a lot better. So really encouraged by the Red Wings. I would guess you are too. Really encouraged that the NBA got it right. The NBA finally got it right. Cade Cunningham is an all-star, and he deserves to be an all-star. He has been consistent. It's hard, I think, for a lot of us to decide what's right and what's wrong when it comes to these types of accolades, these all-star appearances, for example.
It can be a little subjective.
I think it's absolutely warranted because we watch him every night.
Right.
But what about guys like Domantas Sabonis? Are we as upset that a guy like that is not in as we would be emotionally that Cade Cunningham is in?
We're not. No way.
No, there's no way because we're not following it at all. We're not looking at it like, wow, you know what? Who should have gotten in and didn't? Because we looked at it that way last year with perhaps a player or two. But we're not taking look the Charlotte Hornets. If you don't think they've got a complaint and a legitimate gripe that LaMelo Ball is not in, and he's averaging 28 points per game, then you're misled.
The discourse online last night was around LaMelo Ball. I mean, people were up in arms about it. A lot of fans around the league.
Devin Booker's 11th of the league. I know it's not all about scoring. He's 11th in the league in scoring, though. He's 12th in assists. Dude averages 25.5 points per game. He averages almost 7 assists per game. You're going to have snubs. I understand that. You had him in the NFL. You have him in Major League Baseball. We talked about it with Major League Baseball as well. How in the world, Tyrese Maxey's a good example. He was really good last night. How in the world does Domantas Sabonis, for a second straight year, get screwed? Think of this. If your guy averaged an NBA best 42 double-doubles, nobody's got more double-doubles than Domantas Sabonis. And we sit there and go, look at what Cade has done. And rightfully so. Sacramento, dude's got 42 double-doubles. It's not Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's not Nikola Jokic. It's not LeBron James. It's not Anthony Edwards, Ant. It's not Cat. Karl Anthony Towns. You know?
But Shep, that's just it. I mean,
Kyrie.
But
It's
these guys that you're
Domantas
naming,
Sabonis.
I mean, that's the age-old question, right? Yeah, Domantas Sabonis probably is all-star caliber, but you look at the list, you got to take someone off. Who are you taking off? It's tough.
14.5 rebounds, 21 points, 6.5 assists. That's what you're looking at.
He should be in there.
Absolutely. And again, I understand it. You're going to have those who are upset. I'm sure people in Dallas are upset that it's, Kyrie Irving's not in there. All right.
It's like the college football playoff, right, Shep? You're never going to please everybody. You got to draw the line somewhere, and unfortunately, someone's going to get snubbed.
But that is based on rankings as it goes, right? But you're right. I mean, from emotional and a feeling standpoint. But look, this is why I always say the popularity stuff. Jaylen Brown, Steph Curry, Darius Garland, James Harden, Tyler Hero, Jaren Jackson, LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley. Kyrie Irving's averaging more points than all those guys.
But the popularity is just the starters. I mean, the coaches pick the reserves.
I know what it is. Yeah, I'm just saying. Some of those guys I mentioned, they're starters. Some of those guys I mentioned are reserves.
Right.
So I get that you can have some disappointment and frustration and borderline pissed off if certain guys aren't making it. We feel really good because our guy did make it, and we should feel really good about that because it's well deserved. Something we said yesterday is coming true today, and it comes from a pitcher in Major League Baseball. We'll get to that when we come back on X's and Bros. Stay.
Huge here for the Michigan High School Athletic Association. You can stay up to date on the latest
remember when we played this? When was it? Rob Rubik and I were broadcasting from Ferris Coffee, who brings you this hour of X's and Bros. I believe that's where we were. And you played that song. And then if you're a Lions fan, if you're old enough and you're a Lions fan, it takes you back to Jimmy Allen and the rest of the Lions who got too high and mighty and then fell down. And look, we did the same thing this year. I did. Full stop. I got way ahead of myself. I think that's inevitable in sports. Am I wrong there? Where you feel so good about your team, so confident about your team. I want to rush to tell everybody what I think, and it's going to come to fruition. It's great when it turns out that way, but it sucks when it doesn't.
None of us saw one and done in the playoffs coming.
No way.
None of us.
No way. Not
despite all the injuries,
not with all the things that they had going for them. No way did we see it. No way did we see it from a rookie quarterback. No way did we see it from a first-time head coach in that franchise anyway. Dan Quinn had been a head coach elsewhere. No way did we see the ability to, didn't take advantage of Washington's rush defense. The turnovers.
All the turnovers.
All those things. Did not see it coming. And yet that's exactly what happened. When I hear that song, I got to think, don't call anybody else out if you're not going to call yourself out. So I'm calling myself out because I said it, I don't know, before the season for sure. I would say probably 6-7 games in, I thought Detroit and Buffalo in the Super Bowl, and I'm wrong about that too. Neither one of those teams are going to play in the Super Bowl. Instead, going to New Orleans is Philadelphia and Kansas City, and that'll take place next week. Let's get to some texts. You can always text us, Sports Radio 21,000. That's how you get involved. Or you can call us on the Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. This hour of X's and Bros proudly brought to you by our friends at Ferris Coffee. Who's up? What do we got?
Yeah, keep the text rolling. They're rolling this morning. This one says, I miss the old Pro Bowls a ton. All the different helmets and great players on one field. Peyton Manning calling out his kicker. Many will cry the Pro Bowl sucked. No, the Pro Bowls today suck. In all caps.
Peyton Manning calling out his kicker. What a great line in that text. Dude, Mike Vanderjagt. It's interesting. The texter brings that up. I was reading an article the other day about Mike Vanderjagt. I think it was on The Athletic, and how his life completely changed after he missed a playoff field goal. And it just didn't work out for him. He ended up going other places and couldn't stick. He knew he was done. Prior to that, he would be the first to tell you he was the greatest kicker of all time. He used to say that. He was exactly what kickers are not supposed to be. He was brash. He was bold. He was willing to tell people, bring it on. One of the coaches, I forget who, I don't know if it was Belichick, tried to ice him one time, and he looked at him and he pointed at him, and he made the field goal anyway. He would say to Tony Dungy, allegedly, do you want to win or do you want to go to overtime? If you want to win, put me in. Like, he thought he was that cocky as a kicker. And by the way, growing up, he was really athletic. He was a really good soccer player, supposedly a really good, I think it was a baseball player as well. So he was a guy who felt like he was a really important piece to that Colts push. The funny line about, Peyton Manning calling out his kicker, that was at a Pro Bowl. Mike Vanderjagt had gone on somebody's show. I don't know if it was I don't think it was a podcast back then. I think it was a radio show, and did an interview and kind of called out Tony Dungy that he's too nice and said Peyton Manning had to be better. You can do that as a talk show host and as a columnist and a TV personality.
Talk is cheap.
It's pretty tough to do that when you're a flipping kicker and you're doing it against the face of your franchise. Whether you believe it or not, saying that publicly when you've got to be that guy's teammate is bullcrap. And Peyton Manning came out in the Pro Bowl broadcast and said, we got an idiot kicker who gets drunk, in so many words. Mike Vanderjagt was pissed. He confronted Manning, and Manning looked at him and says, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing? What are you accomplishing by that?
What's wrong with you?
The interesting thing there is that everybody thinks they hate one another. Manning calls him every year on his birthday. Vanderjagt had Manning out to work with his kids. They probably talk at least once a month, and they do have a very good relationship. That and that I think therein lies the beauty of sports, and to a certain extent, without getting sexist, guys can call each other out and still love one another. You can't do that as a female. I remember a quote. It wasn't a quote. It was a TV clip where Peyton Manning is talking about some frustrations on the sideline, and Jeff Saturday, his center, is complaining that we're not running the ball. We got to run the ball, man. Manning gets up, charges over him. He goes, "Hey, we're going to run the ball. When I decide we're going to run the ball, you just worry about playing center." Offensive linemen come to Saturday's defense. Manning starts getting into it with just about all of them. The irony was they came back and they won that game. Guys can do that. Then they get in the huddle. Everything's settled down. We're all on the same page. We move past it. We don't let it linger anywhere. I thought it was interesting. It's a great line from the texter, but it was interesting to read that about Vanderjagt, who I didn't like at the time. I can't say that I still do. However, to see the tight bond that he and Manning still have, I think is a credit to both of them to be able to get past it. All right, another text. Go ahead.
This one says, how about Sean Taylor absolutely lighting up a punter? Kids, there used to be real hits in the Pro Bowl. Far cry from the catch contest.
Yeah, good for you. Sean Taylor is one of the best safeties of all time, I think. Left this
absolutely.
Earth soon. Here's the other thing. That's a really good example. Not to go old guy here. Remember when Pete Rose ran over Ray Fosse in the Major League Baseball All-Star game?
I have seen it on YouTube.
Okay. Watched it as a kid. Thought it was one of the more kick-ass things I've ever seen. There are certain awesome things in sports where you go, that is unbelievable, man. Like we see these great catches by guys, right? Whether it be Calvin Johnson in the past, Tyreek Hill now, Odell Beckham, right? Malik Neighbors. We see all these. It's like, wow, unbelievable grab. Sam Laporta in the playoffs against Washington, unbelievable grab. But there are certain things in life where you're like, I remember that. That is really kick-ass. Pete Rose running over Ray Fosse, who I got to know during my time as a broadcaster with Tigers baseball. And unfortunately, he passed. He was a broadcaster for Oakland, as good a guy as you'll ever meet, and knows that everything that every time he wants to talk to somebody, that's what they remember. But he still embraces it. It's fine. Everything's good. He was messed up for a long time after that. Really never got back to who he was prior to that. But it is a Major League Baseball moment in an all-star game that was awesome. I've always said this about MLB all-star games. It's so much different than NBA, NHL, and NFL. NFL sucks. We all know that. All right. Just go to the playground and put on flags. But the Major League Baseball all-star game, you have to compete. You're forced to compete, because if you don't compete defensively, it's an error, right? It makes you look terrible. You can't play you can play matador defense in basketball like they do in the NBA All-Star game. You can play matador defense, and it's not that big of a deal because there's not really a statistic other than plus minus. If you follow it, and we talked about this the other day, not many people do. Other than plus minus, you're not really getting ridiculed for that. It's about scoring in the NBA All-Star game. Same thing with the NHL All-Star game. That's why all they are skills competitions. There's not competition. You don't see many guys in an NHL All-Star game playing defense, poke checking, and running a guy into the wall like you would during a game. It's not the same product as you get during the regular season. The NBA All-Star game is not the same product you get during the regular season. Guys are just giving people the lane to dunk and posterize one another. That's what it is. Major League Baseball, you're forced to play defense. Dave Parker throwing out a player at home plate. I forget who it was, but in right field in the All-Star game. Awesome moment. The only thing that might be close to being cheapened is when Cal Ripken hit a home run in his final All-Star game, and people thought it was served up. I forget who made the pitch. Name escapes me right now. It's a Japanese pitcher. Just laid it in there. And everybody was up in arms. And I remember saying, wait, hold on a second. Are we up in arms about all the other All-Star games? where it's completely fixed, where it's completely, here you go, buddy, go ahead and take a 3. I'll give you a wide open look. No, we don't do that. We just don't watch them. Major League Baseball, you look like an idiot if you let it go through your legs on a ground ball. So I'm with you, man. I mean, there are certain iconic moments in all-star festivities that make you go, wow, that was pretty awesome. And the Pete Rose running into Ray Fosse is one. And then Sean Taylor is definitely one. That's when it really mattered. That's when it was really cool. And I get why some players would, and I've had this discussion with players before, and they'll say, Shep, what are you talking about? Why should I risk my future during an all-star game? I said, okay, that's fine. But just don't call it an all-star game. Don't call it, all it is a glorified skills competition. That's all I'm saying. Don't play it. Don't go. Look at how many guys aren't going in the NFL Pro Bowl, quote unquote. Was it 23 we said the other day? That's why J.J. Watt said, this is not what the Pro Bowl used to be when I played.
It's the participation poll.
Yeah, the participation poll. Yeah, that's what he called it.
By the way, Penei Sewell's one of those guys who's electing not to go because he's quote unquote injured. I mean, I don't blame him one bit.
Yeah, he could be. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go to Orlando? That's fine by me. I don't know why the NFL plays the game. Like Jared Goff won the accuracy competition last night. That's great. Is that going in the bio?
No. And then, of course, you got all the trolls online saying, well, I mean, he thought he thought all those targets were Commanders DBs, and that's why he won it's stupid.
Does that upset you?
It upsets me a little bit.
You get upset, man. I mean, look.
I get defensive.
Hold on. Let's be honest here. You and your brother are at that game.
Yeah. You're
watching it. You're pissed. You guys jump in the car. You've got a 2.5 ride back to Grand Rapids. Neither one of you said something similar to that?
Oh, of course we did. Okay. I'm not being a hypocrite here. I'm just saying I can criticize Jared Goff because I watch every Lions
game. It's like
game.
Music. It's like religion, and it's like your sister. All right?
Yes.
I can criticize all I want.
You can't
do it. You got problems with me. All right? So let's be careful. All right, give me another text. By the way, 2 excellent texts. I love them. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a decent segue into this next one. Says, as a Lions fan, I'm conflicted on this Pro Bowl. Lions are well represented, and yet they shouldn't be because they should be in New Orleans. Shep, will you tune in at all?
No, will not. No.
Shortest answer of the day.
Don't need to. I mean, it's just oftentimes I'll look at certain events and say, is that something my friends in our audience want to hear about? On Monday, is that something that should be discussed? Perhaps. If it is, if Trent and I decide it is, if you guys want to give me a heads up here today that it's something you want to talk about, I'll watch it. I'll watch it because you're interested. I'm not watching it because I'm not interested in all. There are certain things that I watch in sports every single day, and I want to make sure it's either topical or something that I truly want to watch. If I thought it would be great to talk about the Tiger Woods Golf League, the TGL, then I would probably watch that more than I do. I'm not going to lie. I have watched it a little bit. I don't like it. I'd like to play in it. I'm going to go to the simulator later today because I do that on a pretty regular basis on Friday with some friends because I miss golf, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not watching that. To me, I think it's a waste of my time. What else could I do? I could take my dogs to the dog park. I could watch a decent show with my wife. I could extend my dinner plans a little bit more. I got to be honest with you, Trent. Full disclosure, I don't even know what time it's on.
Yeah, Shep, I had no idea that things had already started. The quote-unquote festivities had already started. I this morning, I'm scrolling on my feed, and I see that Frank Ragnow was involved in a spike competition, and Jared Goff won the accuracy competition. And I'm sitting here thinking, I didn't even know this started.
I want you to think about that, a spike competition. They started on Thursday. Do you have a rundown of what it's going to be this week?
No clue.
Do you have any idea when it's going to be played?
Not a clue.
Okay. Oftentimes I'll go to websites and I'll see what are they talking about most? What's the most important thing about certain sports? So if you go to, let's just say ESPN, you go to NFL and you tab down and you go home. What's on? I don't see anything about the Pro Bowl last night until you scroll down a little bit later. And it's a skills competition where Quinnen Williams, mammoth spike, wins at the Pro Bowl games. And everybody's sitting around watching it. Jared Goff wins the passing competition. Okay. I'm sure next year in his bio and during a broadcast, whether it be TV or radio, someone will mention, Quinnen Williams is out there, really good lineman, won the spike competition in the Pro Bowl last year. That
Could
would
you
make
imagine?
a listener or a viewer go, what the hell did he just say? Jared Goff, how many times do you think when the Lions are on national TV next year, every game's on national TV. When the Lions are on TV next year or during a radio
Prime
broadcast,
time.
Dan Miller and company are talking about, what's great? He won the NFL passing competition by dominating his accuracy last year.
I'm going to go with 0. I'm going to guess 0.
First and 10, moving right to left with the ball at the far side hash and up 14-3. No one's doing that.
It sounds ridiculous. Even us role playing it sounds ridiculous.
So when is the Pro Bowl? It is Sunday at 3:00.
Are they playing dodgeball tomorrow, or is that on Sunday before the game?
They started the festivities Thursday night. I'd love to know the numbers on who watched this stuff. Absolutely, I think it's garbage personally, but some people
You're
will watch
correct,
it, and that's fine. I'm not saying I am correct. I say my personal opinion. I think it's garbage. When we come back, something we said yesterday is believed by other national members of the media. And do you think the NBA needs an adjustment? One of their leaders does. We'll talk of that when we roll on a Friday morning on X's and Bros.
Get ready for the big game.
coming up, something that the NBA feels like it needs to do, a little bit of an adjustment. Do you agree? You can call us on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000 in this hour of X's and Bros. The first hour brought to you by our friends at Ferris Coffee in Grand Rapids, 100 years family-owned, the official coffee maker of the Detroit Lions, available in 50 states, and found at Meyer this hour. The second hour of X's and Bros on this Friday morning, brought to you by our friends at Meyer. In case you missed it last night, Red Wings with a 3-2 shootout win over Edmonton. Dylan Larkin, Michael Rasmussen score in regulation. Lucas Raymond and Dylan Larkin score in the shootout, while Alex Lyon boasting 45 saves and doing so in impressive fashion, but also in that shootout stopping Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Connor McDavid, who I think is the best player on earth. Detroit's now on a 4-game roll. Cade Cunningham is a deserved all-star after averaging 25 points, 9 assists, 6.5 rebounds. He becomes the first Piston all-star since Blake Griffin in 2019. NFL Network reporting the former Stanford head coach David Shaw is going to be the Lions' next passing coordinator. I believe he went to high school in Metro Detroit, in Rochester. I think he went to Adams because his father was working for the Lions. And former Tiger Max Scherzer signs a 1-year deal with Toronto worth $15.5 million. I do want to mention something else. I think it was yesterday. Shane Lowry converted a hole-in-one at the AT&T Pebble Beach at that golf outing or that tournament. Have you seen his holes-in-one on the PGA Tour?
I have not.
Okay. In 2016, he did it on the par 3 16 at the Masters. In 2022, he did it on the Island Green on number 17 on TPC Sawgrass. And then yesterday, he did it on the par 3 7th at Pebble Beach. I don't know what it's like to have a hole-in-one. I've come close.
Me either.
maybe twice. And look, when somebody says it's almost a hole-in-one, I say this all the time about recreational golfers, and I am one, but I try to be as honest as I possibly can. I'm not going to lie. If I'm in a divot, I'm going to move it out of the divot. But I try to be as honest as I possibly can. If you want to give me a 3-footer, I oftentimes will take it. But
yeah,
anyway, I'm not looking at the PGA Tour. If I hit one I think is in the fairway and it's at nighttime or in the fall and there's a lot of leaves and I look for it for 5 minutes and I can't find it, and I know it's not like I sliced it, it's not like I hooked it. If I hit it and me and my partners go, yeah, it should be right here, and I can't find it because the leaves are, I'm not taking a penalty. Sorry. If you think that is wrong and illegal and it's recreational golf, I'm not sitting here breaking 80, unfortunately. I've only done that twice. I am probably not going to take a penalty there for lost ball, especially when the fairway is wide. I mean, this happened to me last fall. I can't find the ball. Like, it was right here.
Yeah, you see it drop, and then you get up there and you can't find it.
You get up there, you can't find it, and it's not just you; it's you and your partner. Anyway, I don't know what it's like to have a hole-in-one. Yes, I've come a little close, like to within a foot and a half. I think that's pretty close. Can you? I mean, doing this on those 3 poster hole shots or poster holes at those courses is, to me, amazing. And what a feeling that must be, just to have one. I don't care if it's on your local municipal golf course, to do it at those 3 iconic holes in those tournaments on those courses. Incredible. So good for him. It's hard to put into words for him, let alone anybody else. I can't imagine anyone having 3 more signature holes in one than Shane Lowry and what he did. Here's our poll question. Is it time to admit that Lucas Raymond is the Red Wings' best player? Ironically, we put that up, and Dylan Larkin, who I think most people would at least put in the conversation as their best player.
That'd probably be the number 1 answer. Like, if this was Family
so?
Feud and there's top 5 answers on the board, that's probably number 1, right?
I think so. Not just because he's the captain.
Right.
Here's what I was trying to think of. Do people go toward Alex DeBrincat because of his prowess to score goals, even before Detroit? Patrick Kane because he's a Hall of Famer.
Because they know that name, right? If it's a more casual fan.
I think they know Dylan Larkin. I mean, Dylan Larkin's on the roster for the 4 tournaments. So I think the 4 Nations tournament. It's not like people don't know him. He did win fastest skater one year in the All-Star competition.
There's that. There's another fun little All-Star.
Yeah, I was just ripping on the spiking and the accuracy.
The catch contest.
Yeah. Although spiking competition is so stupid. It really is. It's
the
just
dumbest thing ever.
Seriously, somebody's
It's the dumbest thing ever.
Table, right?
They should arm wrestle.
Looking at each other and they're going, "We need some ideas for the skills competition." And somebody goes, "I got an idea." Sure, what is it? Who has the hardest spike? Hey, I like that. I like that. I like that a lot. We could sell that to an alcohol distributor. That would be good. Spike your coffee with a little rum. Here you go. It's brought to you by.
Oh, genius.
That was a good idea. And then the NFL implemented it. It's not just the idea. It's the fact that it got through layers of checkpoints. And somebody goes, done. How about this? How about going to the players themselves? What a novel idea. Go to the soldiers on the ground and say, hey, we're looking for ideas. Love to get your input. Give me some things you guys would like to participate in. Go. Is that so outrageous?
No.
I don't think so.
Do we know if they've done that or not? Because I feel like some of these guys, some of them in the NFL's defense, some of these players do look like they're enjoying it and having fun. But I don't. Well, it also, to the other half, it seems like a chore. They're just there for the sake of publicity and their team.
Yeah, I think maybe some of those young guys, I don't want to be too hypocritical here or critical of the league because everything they do turns to gold. But to me, it just seems a little strange. All right, let me get to this real quick. And then we'll get to the NBA and whether or not it needs an adjustment. And what's interesting is Kevin Smith, who writes on the NBA, is going to join us at 8:35. We're going to talk about the various all-star inclusions and snubs, or Keith Smith. I said Kevin. Keith Smith. We're going to we're going to talk a little bit about the inclusions. Cade Cunningham, deserve it. The Pistons, the league in general. Is Cleveland really that good, and why? All these other things coming up at 8:35 here on X's and Bros. So we were talking yesterday about Jack Flaherty and where perhaps it makes a lot of sense for him to land. Detroit is definitely a possible destination. I would say Baltimore is probably in that mix as well. They could use some help with their rotation a little bit. And, you're trying to keep up with the Yankees in that division, and Boston's made some moves. So for sure, they're going to try and do something like that. Others might consider the Mets. We said, the Tigers make sense. And then Trent asked me on what kind of deal. And I said, a 3-year deal, but the 3rd year would be a team option. Even I wouldn't necessarily do a player option because, if they stink, they're gonna make sure they get the option, okay? Because of the opportunity to make the money and knowing that they won't be, a big value on the free agent market. So I was just looking at some Major League Baseball news yesterday, and I see on MLB that they bring up Jack Flaherty, which is exactly what we were talking about. Which teams need him most? Various writers say, the Tigers, the biggest names that we were just talking about. And somebody said it's going to be tough to run through the pitching chaos plan for a full 162 games for the Tigers. And the only starter they've added this offseason is late career Alex Cobb. Detroit clearly needs another starter. There's already familiarity with Flaherty. It fits. Not an ace, but an able mid-rotation guy with some intriguing upside. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. When somebody also kind of embellished a little bit on how much more he would mean and what they said, a 2-year deal with a team or a player option on year number 2. So when Trent asked me that yesterday, I'm not that far off from what even national Major League Baseball writers feel would be the right move for a guy like him in a Tigers uniform. When we come back, does the NBA need to tweak its game? one of its leaders thinks it does. We'll discuss after this.
There's a new player in town. Hi, I'm Herman Moore, Lions
from the Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
A first-timer here. Cade Cunningham, the 23-year-old. Pistons much improved, 23-24. Fourth season. 25 points a game is number 14. 9 assists per night is number 3 in the league. And 11 games of 30-plus and double-digit assist games, 20 of them this year for Cade Cunningham.
I'm so happy for that kid.
Time.
A lot of national love for Cade Cunningham. That's TNT last night, and the announcement that Cade Cunningham is indeed the Pistons' first All-Star since 2019. Shaquille O'Neal had him on last week and was saying, I think you're an All-Star. Charles Barkley, you could hear chime in quickly. I'm so happy for that kid. Everybody should be happy, not just because he gets in, not just because of what he's had to endure with this team's inability to win or his health issues or some of the negativity that surrounded him last year for not being available at the end of the season, even though that's more of a organizational decision, I'm sure, than it was the player himself. But because he has earned it, because it's really important, I think, especially in our society today, when things are just being handed out left and right to people and they're not earning them. This kid earned it. He's no longer a kid. This young man earned the NBA All-Star nod. He should be there. Everybody feels that way. You could argue he should be a starter, but I love the fact that, and it's not because the Pistons are better. It's kind of interesting when you see people look at the Pistons nationally now, and they're saying, they're hovering right around 500, and that's they're much improved. You just heard Ernie Johnson say they're much improved. The Pistons get the All-Star, good for them. Well, guess what? And what was revealed on Thursday, a lot of knocks against certain teams, like Charlotte, because I had already mentioned LaMelo Ball and how he's put up some really good numbers. It shouldn't be all about scoring, but in the All-Star game, that's a pretty big deal, all right? He's averaging 28 points per game, folks. But what do they say? Well, his team is 12-32. Okay.
Shep, we literally got a text about that, if I can read it real quick.
Devin Booker, the same thing. Devin Booker is 11th in the league in scoring, 25.5 points per game. He is 12th in assists, and they bring up, his team's 24-22. Why is that different than Cade Cunningham making it? I like Devin Booker. I think he's a really good player. Of course, the Pistons could have had him, but God forbid. I mean, Stan Van Gundy, the smartest guy in the room. And now doing television, which is great. Nothing's ever said about Stan Van Gundy doing that. But when Matt Millen did it, everybody's like, how could this guy go back to being an analyst and trying to tell us that guys deserve? Stan Van Gundy's doing the same damn thing. Not at the collegiate level, but in the NBA. He ruined the Pistons. He was a disaster. And now in Detroit, what do you get? Oh, man, what a great guy. Let me write another article, a glowing article, because he was my buddy. Joke. No, seriously, it's a joke.
I know it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah,
and that was
really bad.
Those were the teams I grew up watching. But
I'm just wondering, are we being hypocritical in that regard? Look at Trae Young. I told you this 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I said, look, it's going to come down between Cade Cunningham and Trae Young. I don't know if it did, to be honest with you, but people in Atlanta are pretty pissed, I would guess, that he's not in it when he's averaging 23 points, 11.5 assists, and that's what guards are supposed to do, 3.5 rebounds, and 3 3-pointers per game. That's not bad. How good's Atlanta? They're 22-25. Is it really that much different? I guess I look at it this way. I think Cunningham should be there. I think there are certain guys who should not. But I like that Cade Cunningham is there because it's a deserved nod. What if he hadn't been named? What if it was somebody who I just mentioned? What would I be saying about it? I'd be saying probably exactly what I was just revealing, where their team records are. And then I'd have to take a look back and go, wait a minute. It's not like the Pistons are running away with the East. They're fighting for the final playoff spot, for crying out loud. Separate the emotion and your thought if you can. Try to separate it. How upset would you be if your guy put up certain numbers that I just gave you and wasn't selected because his team's not very good. Because that's been the knock on Pistons players. Not that they've had a ton who could deserve to be in the All-Star game, but that's what they've been the knock on the Pistons recently. All right, let's get to some texts. You can text a sports radio to 21,000. What do we got?
This one is exactly what you just talked about, Shep. Says, well-deserved for Cade. I actually might watch this thing. Question, do you think the team wins matter when we're picking all-stars? Is that why he got the leg up on LaMelo Ball?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really is. The easy answer, it appears to be, is yes, but I just gave you some examples of why it really shouldn't matter. I mean, if the team record does matter, why is Cade Cunningham in it?
I mean, his record is better than the other two. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I guess that's what the texter is kind of referring to. Like the Pistons' record is better than the Hornets.
Their record is better than Trae Young and Charlotte, is what you
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to say, wait a minute, Devin Booker, their record is better.
Right, but yeah, and that is in the West, and yeah. How do you feel about that, by the way, the equal representation between the East and West? Do you think that has anything to do with this?
I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but I think it's important. Yeah, I do. And
instead of just going 30 best.
Just so we're clear, Detroit's record is a game and a half better than Atlanta's.
Yeah,
so
it's not much.
We're really splitting hairs here is what we're doing, all right? And Atlanta's lost 7 in a row. So there was a point where Atlanta was ahead of Detroit. And I don't think it's necessarily because of Trae Young, but I'm not going to sit here and claim to know every breakdown of what Trae Young has done this year because I don't watch him unless he plays the Pistons. And therein lies why we don't have a vote and national members of the media, fans, and coaches do. Now, I am not one of those people who believe the coaches have the vote because they've seen all these guys. They know reputations. They know players from scouting reports. And they really know how that player's done going into a game against their team. They are not having a wide view of what the NBA is really all about. They know certain players. There's no doubt about that. But they can't really say how good of a season a certain player has had until they're preparing for that team. It's very similar to that of the Heisman Trophy. When a coach or any type of All-American, I'm sorry, not Heisman Trophy. They don't have Heisman Trophy votes. All-Americans, like who are you voting for? Or all-conference, who are you voting for? They're not watching all those games. Don't kid yourself, okay? Jonathan Smith has not watched every single game that Oregon played. He doesn't watch every single game that Ohio State has played. He'll watch certain breakdowns and certain clips as he gets ready for that team. But once he's played that team, it's time to move on and get ready for the next team. So don't kid yourself into thinking they've watched every single game on Saturday. They're getting ready for their own game. And on Sunday, they're reviewing their own game. And on Monday, they're game planning for the next game. With these NBA selections, I get it's broken down into media, coaches, and fans. Fans watch what? Most of us, anyway. We're watching our team. Okay, there might be an opportunity to watch Cleveland and Oklahoma City one night and go, wow, my team's not playing. I definitely want to watch this game. I can't wait to watch Donovan Mitchell and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That'd be great. Maybe you're a friend of Chet Holmgren. I don't know. That's great. Evan Mobley. Okay, there's the big man matchup. But are you watching OKC on a regular basis? No, you're not. Not if you're in Detroit. You're watching Cade Cunningham and the Pistons on a regular basis. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's we're making it sound like, well, this is so obvious. Of course. Is it really? Obviously, it seems like records do matter for teams. My hope is that they take a long, strong, hard look at the performance of a player. And it's not just points. What are they shooting? How often are they turning over? Things like that. Second time, now third time we've teased this, but I love the text. Speaking to the NBA, perhaps some changes are going to be made. We'll soon find out. We'll discuss on the other side.
Saturday night, April 26th.
Carry on my way.
Best album, their best album ever, right? 5150. I think it's their highest selling album. I think it's the only album Van Halen ever had that went to number 1.
It was their first one. I know that because everyone thought 1984 should have gone number 1, but of course, Thriller was a thing that year. So
okay. I didn't know that was the same year as Thriller. Okay.
I think, Thriller came out 83, but it stayed up there for whatever it was.
Gotcha.
37
and
weeks.
Thriller is one of the highest grossing albums of all time. It might be number 1.
I think it is number 1. Yeah.
I think I always get these kind of confused. That's in there. I think Fleetwood Mac's Greatest Hits is in there. I'm not sure some of the other ones. I always thought Back in Black was in there by AC/DC, which really doesn't have a bad song on the entire album. I look at there's 2 albums for me that I look at and I go, I don't think there's a bad. Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath, not a bad song on the album. Children of the Sea is a really good song. It's underrated. It never gets played. And Back in Black, there's not a bad song on that album.
Well, Shep, here you go. Back in Black is the number 2 album of all time. It's Thriller and then Back in Black. 31.2 million copies.
Boy, I would have thought there was more than that.
31 point. I don't know actually.
What do you mean you don't know? You just
it's number 2, but I can't. It's confusing. It's not worth my time.
What's number 3? Is Fleetwood Mac's Greatest Hits in there? Eagles Hotel California's got to be in there, right? Too.
Hotel California is number 6. Okay. Fleetwood Mac is number 9. So yeah, you're close.
Okay. There's got to be something in there that I'm unfamiliar with.
Number 3 is the Bodyguard soundtrack by Whitney Houston.
There you go. Well done. Holy crap. What is it called? The Bodyguard soundtrack? The
Bodyguard, 1992. Movie with Kevin Costner.
That's a movie.
Yeah, and it was the soundtrack. That's pretty impressive. To be number 3 all time, and it's a movie soundtrack.
It's either impressive or really
pathetic.
What's the soundtrack? I'm unfamiliar with the movie, so I apologize. What's the soundtrack? What are the songs in the soundtrack?
Well, it had the I Will Always Love You, and I think that was what vaulted it into that type of status. There's a bunch of other songs
that song.
Whitney Houston.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's originally written by Dolly Parton, and Whitney Houston covered it for this movie, and it was a monster hit for her. So there's that.
Okay. And Whitney Houston was in the movie.
Yes.
Okay. So there's 3. What's 4 and 5? Do you have it?
Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah. Okay.
And Eagles' Greatest Hits is number 5.
There you go. So I said Hotel California. I bet you the Eagles are the only band in that top that have 2 in the top 10.
Yes, they are. They're the only 2 in the top 10.
One of the most underrated bands of all time. Look, I've had this debate with friends before. Who's the best American-based band of all time? Rock and roll. And I don't even know if you'd say any other format, but why don't the Eagles ever get like people immediately go, well, of course it's Journey out of San Francisco. Of course it's Aerosmith. I think they're out of Boston. What? Really? No, I don't think so.
Van Halen.
I think Van Halen's in the conversation. But I think the Eagles might be the answer.
Well, that's a great question, and that's a great point. And the album sales back your argument there.
Yeah, their harmony is unmatched, and on top of that, you've got guys who went off and spiraled upwards into solo careers. Glenn Frey had a solo career, very successful. Speaking of soundtracks, Beverly Hills Cop. Don Henley had a really successful. Joe Walsh had a successful. Don Felder, to a certain extent, had a successful one. I mean, there's 4 guys out of it. I mean, it's not necessarily the Beatles, although the Beatles had 3, right? McCartney, Lennon, and Harrison. I don't think, Ringo Starr, I guess. Just a couple of songs. But that's impressive.
Yeah.
I would say the Eagles.
No, it is. And that's a great thing you bring up because all the other bands that you think of, I mean, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, they have the British ties. So to think American-based, it's hard to
Who else is in the
that
conversation? Who else is in the conversation?
See, I'm so biased.
Don't say Boston.
I throw Metallica
you
up
4
there.
albums. You can't say Boston. So
I throw Metallica in there. Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
They've stood the test of time. They're still selling out arenas and stadiums across the world. So I throw them in there.
Yeah.
Van Halen too. I mean, it depends how you define it.
We said
with two lead singers, they've had success. That's impressive.
Yeah, we said Van Halen. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you quantify success? I don't know.
Well, you're right. I mean, stand the test of time and still putting out good music. Right? Is that
Absolutely.
fair?
Yep.
I mean, the Eagles are still they don't have obviously Glenn Frey, unfortunately, because he passed. But you have them still touring. I think it's their last tour. I bet you for most, Journey's in the conversation. They're still touring. They put out a lot of really good songs. It's really soft. It's really soft rock.
Yeah, it's more accessible, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
for people
more,
that don't necessarily love noise.
It's more top 25, top 50 type music as far as I'm concerned. It's not really, I don't even know if it's rock and roll. There are certain songs they sing to get a little bit heavier, and I've said this before, Neil Schon is really underrated, I think. But I guess they would be in the conversation. That's a really good one. I'm not. What about the Foo Fighters? Would they
just
be
gonna say? I was gonna say Nirvana, and I thought you would have jumped through the screen.
I'm not a big Nirvana fan, but I understand why they would be in there. Okay.
As far as legendary, they're up there. They're probably top 5 as far as legendary. Nirvana, because they only released 3 albums.
Well, then you're making an argument against them.
No, I'm saying that puts them in. If you never saw them decline, it puts them in rarefied air.
Oh, I don't know, man. I wouldn't put them top 5. That's just me. I put Van Halen in there. I would put for sure the Eagles in there. You know, we're talking about rock and roll here, so don't give me. I'm not talking about the Beach Boys. All right, I'm talking about rock and roll. Van Halen for sure. Creedence Clearwater Revival is in there. I think that's rock and roll. Aerosmith is in there. Obviously, that's rock and roll.
Pre-1990 though, right, Shep?
Yeah, pre-1990. The Doors is probably in the conversation, I would think. Maybe.
Fun discussion. You'll have to ask your son about this.
Yeah, it is a fun discussion. Well, Guns N' Roses. Again, not a huge fan, but whatever. All right, let me get to, I know people are like, come on, you said you're going to do something about the NBA. All right, here we go. There is, the NBA doesn't get the ratings that the NFL does, but they do have big TV contracts. You and I both know that. There has been all kinds of issues with the style of play that the NBA now has adopted. Players are used, and anyway, whatever. The league, according to Adam Silver, last week said this on a national radio show, the Dan Patrick Show, saying that the league is looking at an opportunity to try and shorten games. Are you aware of this? What do you think of it? His idea is 10-minute quarters. Rather than 12, he wants to shorten every quarter by 2 minutes. Here's what he said. Something that I'm a fan of, and I'm probably in the minority as we get more involved in global basketball. The NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. So the NBA is willing, he's going to conform to every place else, even though the NBA is the leader, which I don't get. You lead by example. Other organizations don't do it. So what if FIFA doesn't play 48 minutes? You want to conform to the way they do it? Okay. He said, I think a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with modern television habits. So now it's about TV. Okay. People in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but being in a television program, 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball, college basketball, of course. It's such a dramatic change to the game, something that would be talked about more over time. And then he did this. He said, he brought up baseball's pitch clock as a comparison and how much good it has done to shorten the average game. The problem, Commissioner, is that baseball had an issue because of its pace of play, not as much with its length of play. It's how the game is played. Your problem isn't how long it's played. It's the pace of play or the shot selection or what people deem to be a characteristic or skill set that is lost in shooting the ball. That's number one. Number two, it's the number of timeouts you have and how long it takes to finish a game with fouling at the end and calling timeout after timeout after timeout. If you really want to figure, you don't have to shorten it 2 minutes every quarter and be a follower of other leagues instead of being the leader. But what you could do, peel back out on timeouts. You could do something like that. That might not be a bad idea. So the final 2 minutes don't take you 25 minutes to play, that it actually takes you closer to 2 minutes to play. That might not be a bad idea. Baseball drastically changed many of its rules. They will tell you some is for safety. The larger bags. That's bullcrap. That's so players have more of an advantage to steal a base. Everything moving forward, since the size of the bags has increased, should be now brought up with a little bit of a grain of salt because of the way the bags used to be when Ricky Henderson and Lou Brock and Ron LaFleur and Willie Wilson and Bump Wills and all those people were stealing bags before they made them this large. And the inability for pitchers to hold on batters. I'm not going to tell you that that's the worst rule in the league. The two disengagement rule from the bump, to me, is a little ridiculous. It gives a clear advantage to the runner. What the answer is, I'm not quite sure, but I think a 2 disengagement is borderline unfair. We've seen it in other leagues. All right, we've seen it in the NFL. Little handsy. Go back and look at some of the catches, some of the throws, some of the coverages in the 70s in the National Football League and how close guys are to players because you could hit them downfield. You want to increase the scoring. That's one way to fix it. You want to increase the opportunity to score. That's one way to fix it. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad rule. I think the NFL gets very ticky-tack when it comes to throwing flags on cornerbacks. It's on a pretty regular basis. It sure doesn't help that players get up and are whining for it and quarterbacks are whining for it. But that's a different topic for a different day. Baseball, what it has done has drastically changed. I'm not a fan of the pitch clock. I never have been, and I've told you why. Because the rules used to state with nobody on base, you had 12 seconds to throw the pitch. It was never enforced. Had it been enforced, you wouldn't need the pitch clock in the first place. Not many pitchers are taking 20 seconds in between, okay? So the disengagement and the pitch clock, therein lies, speeds up the pace of play, which I guess you could use. Shep, you're kind of, mixing things up here, nitpicking and kind of using words to your advantage. I suppose with the pace of play, then it's going to shorten the game. And it has. It's shortened the game. But I think more importantly, it has made the games more watchable because of the pace of play. You're getting it, you're throwing it. You're staying in the batter's box. You've got 8 seconds for you to acknowledge all those things. Great. Those could be implemented without a pitch clock, and those were all part of it beforehand. Umpires could have easily just said, you know what, Mike Hargrove, you know what, Nomar Garciaparra, stop screwing around and get in the box. If not, you're going to get a ball called on you. Boom, get it done. You could do that. You could have done that before. Now they need something proof. It helps the umpires legitimize certain calls to the bench and to fans as well. Okay, fine. For Adam Silver to say, look at how it sped up the game, it shortened the games in baseball. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the average length of game in basketball is not 3 hours and 10 minutes like it was before the implementation of baseball's new rules. I don't think people have been complaining about that. If you want, here's an idea. Instead of shortening it 2 minutes per quarter, How about doing this? Make it 2 halves like college basketball does. Why don't you do that? Why is it that you've got to take 2 minutes? Look, college basketball has 2 20-minute halves. That's 40 minutes, obviously. How's it that some people might be saying, Shep, how's it any different than the 4 quarters? It's not. I'm just asking, why is it 2 minutes off the quarter? Why not just make it to halves? Why do you need the quarter? Oh, I know why you need the quarters. Because you need the TV timeouts. You need the money. That's what it is. Otherwise, you could do what, I mean, if you're into, look, this is what college basketball does. They play 40 minutes. Yeah, but they play 2 halves. So why don't you just go all the way and change it in that regard? Is there a difference in FIFA? Is there a difference in European basketball besides just the time? Yes, there are other differences. Why are you nitpicking one out of the other? Oh, I know why. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to me that the NBA is supposed to be the leader in these things, that the games really aren't that long, and that suddenly they feel the need to do this, and he uses baseball as the example that was widely skewered by people as too slow of a sport. There's a lot of things you can say about basketball. These guys don't shoot the 2 as well. They take way too many threes. They flop a little bit.
They travel.
They don't know the fundamentals. They don't shoot free throws quite like they used to. They are constantly carrying the basketball. They travel a little bit. A little bit? No, a lot. A lot of things. Have you ever said, I don't like the pace of this game? Maybe when they were playing 4 corners and Dean Smith was in charge of North Carolina back in the 70s. No, you've got a shot clock. So there's the pace right there. You've got to get the ball up within 24 seconds. So I don't understand that. Do you think they need to change and go from 48 minutes to 40 minutes? What does it accomplish? You still have the TV timeouts. You still have all the timeouts for coaches, all those things. Maybe it saves you a little bit. Maybe they've done the study on this that we're not aware of, but I don't see how that's a big deal. You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see them going back to having athletes who actually can make jump shots. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. And that's, by the way, not necessarily the NBA's fault. That's earlier in life. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Final hour coming up right after this.
Hey, Michigan, let's go big. I'm Herman Moore, Lions All-Pro wide receiver, and I'm talking real big-time winning on the hottest slots and table games on one incredible app, Eagle Casino and Sports. Sign up now.
Get some facts and come back and see me. Get some facts and come back and see me. Don't throw out salaries or other things. Get some facts and come back and see me.
You can't handle the truth.
I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
We weren't good. There's no sense in asking me things about the game. I'm telling you, we laid an egg, so I'm not going to break it down for you. He sucked. He sucked. But he laid an egg. That's all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to break it down for you. Nothing went well for us. It's on us. We have to figure it out, and we will.
It's showtime.
But John Tortorella would have said a lot of things went well for the Red Wings last night in a 3-2 shootout win in Edmonton. Edmonton, one of the better teams in hockey, tied atop the Pacific Division with Las Vegas going into that game, winners of 3 in a row, with the best player in the world in Connor McDavid, with one of, if not the second best players in the world in Leon Draisaitl. Really like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, Evan Bouchard. They've got some really good talent there in Edmonton, and they jumped out to a 2-0 lead. But Michael Rasmussen responds with a tip-in goal. Luke, you get Dylan Larkin with a beautiful goal thanks to a great pass, by the way. It was a fantastic pass. Love what Detroit has been doing is from Marco Kasper, and Kasper's the one who played it off the wall. Larkin picks it up, flies up the right side, and then beats Skinner to make it 2-2. They go to an overtime, no blood drawn there. They go to the shootout. Detroit gets goals from Lucas Raymond and from Dylan Larkin, while Alex Lyon, to his credit, I have complained about him before, but give credit where credit is due. 45 saves against that team and stonewalling Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Connor McDavid in the shootout. Detroit's winning streak now at 4. I don't know if you saw this, but Alexander Ovechkin and the Capitals lost last night, but he did score his 23rd goal of the season and is now 19 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time scoring list record, I should say, goals record. I'm not afraid to admit I don't want him to break it, but he's going to break it. A lot of people want to see history. I get that. There are certain things that I hold dear, but Ovechkin's been an unbelievable player. He's at age 39, and yet he's tied for 11th in goals scored in the NHL. And I said this earlier in the show, but in case you're just joining us, we make so much, and rightfully so, by the way, out of how good LeBron James has been in his career. And at age 40, he's doing things you never really saw. Hockey players, they have a tendency to go deeper in careers and able to do that. I don't know exactly the reason for that, but not enough is being made of Alexander Ovechkin's career at age 39. He's got more gray in his beard and he's got more gray in his head than LeBron James does, but he's a little bit younger, just a little bit, and yet he's still putting up marvelous numbers and leading a team to a really good record, okay? Much better record than the Lakers have. Cade Cunningham is a deserved all-star, 25 points, 9 assists, 6.5 rebounds. He becomes the first Pistons all-star as a reserve. He's a reserve for the Eastern Conference. He becomes the first Pistons all-star since Blake Griffin in 2019. David Shaw going to be the Lions' next passing coordinator, and former Tiger Max Scherzer signing a one-year deal in Toronto worth $15.5 million. When we look at the Tigers rotation, we talked about this yesterday, right? Tarek Skubal, best pitcher in the American League, arguably the best pitcher in all of baseball. Jackson Jobe, you hope. What are the chances that he's going to throw 150 innings? Minimal. It's not happening. So you got to come up with innings, right? So Jackson Jobe, love him, love stuff, love that they called him up last year, love that he got his feet wet in the postseason, love the makeup, all that stuff. But how much can you rely on him coming up this season? National writers have said the same thing in articles last night after our discussion. Not that they were listening to us, but after our discussion, you're just not going to, and we've said this for a while now. I said it as soon as the season ended. I think he'll be in the rotation in 2025. The question is, how many innings can he give you? So there's two. Reese Olson, struggles to stay healthy, has never really pitched deep into a season in terms of, number of innings. How much can you rely on that? Then you've got Alex Cobb. You need another arm without question. Jack Flaherty would be a nice fit as long as Jack Flaherty's willing to sign a short-term deal as far as I'm concerned. But if you look at the Toronto rotation, Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, Jose Barrios, Bowden Francis last year. I mean, they don't even worry that Alek Manoah is no longer a decent pitcher. Remember when he started the All-Star game, he was mic'd up and everybody loved him? Where is he now? It's not a bad song, but I mean, where is he now? Nowhere to be found. Toronto moves on, right? You have to be willing to do that. That's a good rotation. I'm not saying it's the best in the American League. That's a good rotation. When you want to measure your team against certain other teams, look at it and say, how do our guys match up? I would take Tarek Skubal out of all those pitchers. Maybe Jackson Jobe eventually down the road, right? Not this year, but down the road. Bassett, Gausman, Barrios. Did you watch Francis pitch down the stretch last year for Toronto? That's a good rotation. Here's our poll question for you. Is it time to admit that Lucas Raymond is the Red Wings' best player? Yes or no? Vote as often as you like at XB Mornings. I've retweeted it out, and we'll have the results for you in the 8 o'clock hour on Monday. Just to wrap up the basketball thing, because we had short time there. We got involved in a music discussion, and we've read kind of put that off on the back burner there for basketball. Do you know how long the average basketball game is? Roughly.
No clue. I'd guess 2 hours. 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's closer to like 2.5.
Okay.
All right. At least in 2024, it was closer to 2.5. The average length of the game, about 2.5 hours from start to finish. Now remember, again, that's timeouts, injuries, fouls constantly. You want a cleaner game, don't have as many fouls, don't allow as many timeouts. It might work on some things. But when you look at Major League Baseball, before they made the changes, the average game, I believe, was somewhere in the realm of 3 hours and 6 minutes. 3 hours and 6 minutes. How long do NFL games go?
3.5 hours.
Yeah. 3 hours, 20 minutes, 3 hours, 25 minutes.
Which is why they have the 1 o'clock window, the 4:30 window, the 8:30 window.
Okay, that's obvious. All right. NHL. Not that people are comparing leagues to the NHL. All right. Because that's a very narrow scope when it comes to wanting to watch hockey. You got to love it. I love it. I watch a lot of different games, but if you look at the NHL, okay, they've got breaks in between. They've got 2 breaks of 20 minutes. Play 20 minutes, break 20, 20 minutes, break 20, 20 minutes. That's a long time. Okay. But the action makes a huge difference. So when you're looking at 3 periods of 20 minutes, you're better at math than I am. There's 60, right? And then you get 2 breaks of 20 minutes. There's 40. So 110 minutes right there. You're looking well over 2 hours, knowing that you also have, well, I'm saying well over 2 hours, knowing that you also have timeouts, you have penalties, all those things, right? And then you get to overtime. It's going to take you a while to get through it. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it should be changed, but it's going to take you a while to get through it. Is the NBA really, I mean, the product on the court can be a problem. I get it. With the 3-point shooting, and up and down and just jacking shots up left and right. I get why some people are a little frustrated with it. Do you think it needs to be completely overhauled in that regard when it's probably the quickest of the sports?
Yeah, pace of play is not the NBA's problem, I don't think.
No,
you and I agree on that.
It's, if you want to say style, that's an individual thing, man. That's a coach's. You're not going to tell a coach how to coach. So throw that out the window. It's players not being able to make shots and settling for certain shots. So if you're worried about the time angle, do the foul thing. Okay? Do the foul thing and work on the timeouts. That's what I would strongly recommend to the NBA. You get fouled out quicker. You're not going to be fouling as often. That makes sense, doesn't it? And stop with the timeouts. Way too many timeouts in the NBA. That's how you fix the problem, not by going from 12-minute quarters to 10-minute quarters. All right, when we come back, we've got the final results from yesterday's poll question. We've got the daily wager, and we've got something else on my mind. Speaking of hockey, love this best of tournament that's coming up, the Four Nations. We'll discuss briefly before at 8:35. We dive into Keith Smith talking NBA and more with us on X's and Bros.
Saturday night, April 26th.
Carry on my wayward son.
Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort welcomes multi-platinum legends Kansas. Tickets start at $47 and are on sale now at the box office or online at etix.com. Don't miss Kansas live.
Another Fork in the Road tour.
At Soaring Eagle Saturday, April 26th. More at SoaringEagleCasino.com.
Get ready for the big game and stock up on home team favorites like buy 5, save $5 deals at Meijer. Mix or match hundreds of items like assorted varieties of DiGiorno frozen pizza, 24 packs of Coca-Cola or Pepsi products, plus deposit where applicable, and Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue or marinade sauce. Buy 5, save 5 this week at Meijer. That's the good life. A good deal better. Exclusions apply. See all deals in-store or in the Meijer app.
Hey, Michigan fans, did you know that your favorite craft brewery is also a proud supporter of Michigan athletics? That's right. Founders Brewing Company has been brewing up high-quality, highly rated beers like All Day IPA, Michigan Pilsner, and
$19 now after the hour here on X's and Bros. Of course, we were just talking about DraftKings Sportsbook. We were talking about Super Bowl 59. And this hour of our program, by the way, brought to you by our friends at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. 11, Kansas City is in this. Trent's not a big Chiefs fan. I think there's a lot of people who don't like the Kansas City Chiefs. 11 of their 15 wins this year, 11 have been by one score. Do we look at that and say they got lucky? Or do we look at it and say they made big plays when they had to? Why is it, if we don't like them, which you and I don't, I like Mahomes, I like Andy Reid, I don't like Travis Kelce, but I do respect the hell out of Travis Kelce embracing the villain role. Bill Laimbeer embraced it. Rick Mahorn embraced it, and we loved them for that. Travis Kelce embraces it. He knows what he is. He doesn't care. He's embraced it. Why do we dislike it? Because he's not ours, which is great. I mean, that's the way it probably should be. But answer me this. I mean, Patrick Mahomes said this yesterday. We have a knack for making big plays. He's got the knack, right? Kelce, to his credit, he's got the knack too. So why is it we look at it any differently? A writer out of Indianapolis had an article about this yesterday and said, you know what? Why don't we just look at it and say that dynasties are boring? I don't think dynasties are boring at all. I think it's awesome. Their ability to do what they do over and over and over. It's amazing to me. There's nothing boring about that to me, at least anyway, in my personal opinion. But then he says the Dodgers are the latest dynasty. And I thought, are the Dodgers really a dynasty? What do you consider a dynasty? Winning championships, right? Or playing for them? Is that fair?
I think you got to win 3. Because I don't think of the. Do you think of the bad?
What do you mean 3?
You have to win 3 championships to be a dynasty. That's how I define it.
Out of what?
It's just with the same core group of people. It could be 10 years. To me, the Spurs were a dynasty. They never went back to back. They won 5 titles over the course of 20 years.
My question to you would be, where do you get 3 from? Why 3? Why not 4?
Because this is just me. I mean, you asked how you define dynasties. Like, to me, the bad boys, as much as we love them, I don't think that's a dynasty. Because
they played in 3 straight NBA championships.
I understand.
But it's not a dynasty.
I think most people, if you asked them, they'd consider the Celtics of that era dynasty, the Lakers, the Bulls.
That's because the number of championships and they are dynasties for sure. I'm not asking all that stuff. I'm asking why 3 is there. That seems to be a very I'm just going to pull a number out. Why 3?
Because to me, it's a knee-jerk thing. It's a gut feeling. You win 3, that's a dynasty. I know
overall or what's the period of time is what I'm asking.
Well, then
for example, the Pistons all time have 3 championships. Is that a dynasty? You said no because it had to be the same core of people.
Yeah.
Tell me the era, the time frame. It's not just 3. It's got to be 3 in what? And where do you get that number from?
How about 3 and 8 years? How about that?
3 and 8. Okay. All right.
And again, that's just throwing numbers out, but
yeah, I mean, my hope is you give.
I don't want the list to get too long. Yeah, I don't want the list to get too long to the point where we're just like, oh yeah, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce were a dynasty.
So I'm thinking about the Dodgers, and I originally thought so. You wouldn't consider the Dodgers a dynasty?
No, not yet.
Okay. They've made the playoffs 12 years in a row. They've played in 4 World Series, and they've won 2 of those World Series. That's pretty damn good. So put it in perspective. The Detroit Tigers, in the history of their franchise, do you know how many times they've made the playoffs? 17. The Dodgers have made it 12 years in a row. The Tigers since 1901 has made it 17. The Dodgers have played in 4 World Series. The Tigers have played in what, 6? And I'm talking about during this stretch, the Dodgers have played in 4.
Right.
And they've won 2. The Tigers have won 4 in the history of the franchise. And I know that's not the bar, unfortunately. I'm just giving you a perspective here.
Well, it's a good way to contextualize it for our listeners.
Yeah.
You know,
I
because
didn't
they follow the Tigers.
originally, when I read this, I didn't think the Dodgers were a dynasty either. When you look at those numbers, 12 straight years in the playoffs, playing in 4 World Series, which is really difficult to get to. And one of them, I think there's an asterisk next to it because it was COVID. They still won it. They're recognized as it. Maybe they are. Maybe they truly are. Not in your world, and I respect that. I'm not saying you're wrong. But for me, when you're giving yourself that much of a chance, my mind immediately went to the Buffalo Bills. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls. Can you be a dynasty without winning it all? Can you be a blue blood of winning it all? The Bills had 4 chances in a row. No one's ever done that. And they didn't win any of them, unfortunately. So then I twist and turn. This is one of my many flaws. I consider Michigan State basketball in their time Izzo a dynasty. Do you?
Yeah, and I think I do think that's a little different because you win
1 national championship.
But you win conference titles, you win conference tournament titles.
Okay.
That matters in college for sure.
Okay, well, so conference titles matter in college, but division titles don't matter in professional?
No, not nearly as much. No.
I didn't say it mattered as much. I said mattered.
But if we're
You
measuring,
would admit conference titles don't matter as much as national championships either.
Of course.
You would admit Big Ten tournament championships don't matter as much as national championships either. I'm not saying that matters more. I'm just saying 12 straight years to win the playoffs. You're winning your division out of those times 10 times. You don't think that matters? That's not part of a dynasty definition? But it is for college? That's an interesting way.
College and pro are different, and you know that.
I do know that, but you use the example of conference titles, and you think conference championships matter. I would argue that division titles, even though they're not most important, is important. Making the playoffs is important, and getting to the World Series in this case, or getting to the championship game, matters. If you're talking about dynasties, I don't think you can be a dynasty if you don't win a championship. So
I agree with you there.
I wouldn't look at it with the Bills. All right, let's quickly get to the final results of our poll question from yesterday because we've got Keith Smith coming up from Sports Rack, and we're going to talk a lot of NBA with him. What were the final results from yesterday's poll question?
We asked who will be more successful, Aaron Glenn in New York or Ben Johnson in Chicago. 54% think Aaron Glenn with the Jets will be more successful.
That surprises me. That surprises me. All right, quickly, the daily wager yesterday and today.
Yesterday, we had Wings money line. That was a win. We're now 2-2 on the week, so we're going to try to go into the weekend with a winner. Okay. I'm going to take Arkansas to cover 10.5 this weekend against Kentucky. It's John Calipari's return to Kentucky. Get your popcorn ready. 9 p.m. on Saturday night. So
it's going to be a struggle. It's been a struggle for him at Arkansas so far. All right, when we come back, we will talk with Keith Smith. He of Sports Rack. We'll talk NBA. We'll talk Cade Cunningham being an all-star and a lot more when we close things up on a Friday. 35 after the hour. Excited for this conversation. Wanted to talk with Keith Smith from Spot Rack, for a long time. You can follow him on Twitter or on X at Keith Smith NBA. Joins us here on X's and BrO's on this Friday morning. Keith, appreciate the time. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate the Beastie Boys coming back. That gets me fired up. Let's go.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a good way to kickstart the weekend. So they named the reserves last night, and you know this, and you'll talk to a lot of your colleagues and a lot of players about this. Anytime you get these type of accolades, these types of votes, you're going to have snubs involved all the time. We don't necessarily have to dwell on that, although I do think Sabonis got totally jobbed. Cade Cunningham getting there for the first time as a Piston, and the first Piston since 2019. Why do you think he's so deserving like we do here in Detroit?
Yeah, he's played really well himself, and obviously part of what factors into this with the reserve vote, because the coaches vote for that, is team performance and the fact that the team has played pretty well. I know they're on a little bit of a slide right now, but they're battling around 500, fighting for a playoff spot. He's really earned it. He's more efficient, which is shocking. They put a roster that makes sense around him, and he's playing better. But he's really taken a major step forward this year.
Why should it matter how well a team is doing if a player is getting into an all-star game, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it is kind of a tiebreaker. And by the time you're getting down to those last couple of spots in each conference, it is, all right, we got to, you got to do something to differentiate these guys. They all have good individual stats. And I think a lot of people start looking at it and saying, all right, who's winning more? Who goes? And again, with the coaches, they value that. They value guys that are driving winning. Like, for example, a guy like LaMelo Ball, he has great stats, but his team is terrible. And the coaches are going to look at that and say, yeah, but it's not like he is, overwhelmingly great stats that he needs to be in the game. So we're going to push forward with, guys who have earned it. There's also a sense too, if teams, like the Houston Rockets, they've played so well in the Western Conference, it was going to be very hard to say, yeah, you played great, but you don't have a single All-Star, even though you've got the third best record in the league. Like, that's going to be very hard, to justify. So that's part of the reason that happened.
Yeah, Devin Booker is another really good example. Domantas Sabonis, two teams that, as of right now, would be on the latter stages of reaching postseason play, but they would, and Booker's got really good numbers. Sabonis leads the league in double-doubles. That whole debate, it rages on. It continues in all sports. It's not just the NBA. Keith Smith from Spot Rack joining us here on X's and BrO's on this Friday morning. What is it you think is important about the NBA All-Star Weekend in general?
It's a chance to celebrate the game. I think people have taken it too far that the game itself is bad. I look at it, so let's use the Cade Cunningham as an example. Guys are out there going a full 100% effort, and Cade Cunningham suffers an injury that wrecks the rest of the Pistons season. No one's going to be happy, right? And everybody's going to be like, in this game that didn't matter, why were you playing so hard? Now, it doesn't need to turn into the complete circus that it's been, the last couple of years. That's a problem. So I think what we're seeing as the league is trying to find ways to find a happy medium there where guys can play harder, but guys don't have to go all out, and we can have a better product. But really, it's about let's celebrate the game, let's have a little fun, let's get this midseason break in, and then get back at it after that and for the stretch run.
Yeah, I respect that, and I think you're right about that. Let's celebrate the game. It's important. Going hard, just that type of phrase bothers me a little bit, because don't expect me to pay 100% for guys who are just good. It's just a showcase. That's all it is. It's to show off some skills, high skills, and that's fine. As long as we admit what it is. It's not really a game, and obviously it doesn't matter. So I wouldn't want Cade Cunningham, if you're a Detroit Pistons fan, to get injured by any stretch, but I'm just not sure of the whole purpose for it. I think baseball is really the only all-star game that is worth a damn anyway, so basketball is not alone in that regard. When you see the Pistons from a national, a high-level scope here, what do you like about what J.B. Bickerstaff has done with this team to make them so much better than that god-awful season of a year ago?
Yeah, I think this one's really simple. They're just more organized on both ends of the floor. You don't see all of the kind of chaotic defensive scrambling around, running around. Nobody's on the same page. Guys are all over the place. And then on offense, they know what they want to run. They know who they are. They run good stuff. They've run good stuff late in games too. That win over the Knicks in New York, where Cade Cunningham, really accepted the double team. It was coming and got off the ball, and they got it moving and got a couple open shots like that. Those are the things that are huge for this team going forward. So yeah, I think that's the big thing. They're just more organized. They play a more reasonable brand of basketball now, and some of that is the roster as well. They've put better shooting around guys that are veteran players who know what they're doing. But all around, it's a far better product in Detroit.
Keith, it's interesting. I think if you're not following the league in general, and you do, you're watching more than just one game. We in Detroit or the state of Michigan are probably watching just the Pistons play. You get a better sense of who the really good teams are and why they're that good. We look at standings and say, well, Cleveland's number one in the East. Oklahoma City's number one in the West. They've got to be the best teams. I look a little bit deeper. I see some of the other numbers that are associated with it. Do you think those two teams are as legitimate as their records would indicate? And who would be the biggest threats in each of the conference to those two teams if you feel that way?
Yeah, I think they are legitimate. I think those two teams have played really, really well, and we've seen it coming with both of them over the last couple of years. Both franchises have kind of taken the traditional path of get into postseason contention, get into the playoffs, be more competitive in the playoffs, and then advance into being real contenders. And that's where they both are right now. I mean, the Thunder, they're doing historic level stuff up until a couple days ago where they slipped a bit. They had a historic scoring margin. That was one of the best we've ever seen in NBA history because they're just blowing teams out left and right, and the Cavaliers aren't far behind. Mm-hmm. All that said, they have come back to earth a little bit. These are not going to be 70-win teams. That's very clear now. And the teams behind them in the East, Boston's right there, and they're the defending champs, and they're going through what every defending champ does, which is just get us back to the playoffs. These games are. We got to get through them. We got to win enough of them to get there. And then in the West, you've got Denver is still lurking. The Lakers are there with their star guys. The Mavericks are playing better. They're going to get Luka back. The Timberwolves are finally starting to put it together. So there's going to be challenges to the Thunder. And I think the big thing that happens in the NBA, till you prove you can win the big series and get there, we're going to have a little bit of hesitation. And that's kind of where we're at with both the Cavs and the Thunder.
I think what's interesting, too, in the West at least, and you're right, the Lakers have come on strong. They've won 7 of their last 10. They're the only team in the top 5 in the West who have a minus point differential. It's very slim, but it's a minus point differential. We see the incredible amount of numbers being put up by teams in terms of three-point shooting. And you've written and spoken about this before. What is the biggest issue you think the league has, fans have, and do players and or coaches have with the amount of falling in love with the three-point opportunity?
Yeah, I think from the player and coach side, I don't ever hear any of them complain about it, minus LeBron James had a couple things to say, but he's always kind of been that way because he's never been a big three-point volume guy himself, even though he is, started to take more of them as his career has gone along. But I think, from the fan side, it's to your point, a lot of fans are watching one game a night. So if the one team that they're watching is shooting a bunch of three-pointers, then they start making all these statements of, well, everybody plays the exact same way. And this team, it's boring because it's just a bunch of three-point shots going up. And there are a lot of three-pointers. I'm not going to, pretend that there aren't. Yeah. But the problem is, I don't know what people are pining for. Do they want people taking less efficient shots and miss just as often because the spacing and defense is tighter on them? I grew up on the NBA of the 80s and the 90s. And if you go back and rewatch those games, you're going to laugh at just how bad it is. It's a bunch, it's 7-8 guys all standing, within 10 feet of the paint. And it's like almost, how did we ever get a shot off here? And the offense is just really, really bad. The games were slow paced. it just wasn't a super watchable product. A lot of it, I think, comes down to nostalgia. It's there, and then I think the bigger chunk of it too is everyone's trying to solve for, well, why are people not watching as much? People aren't watching any sports as much as they were a while ago. Even the NFL has fallen off. Now they're so far
Not by
ahead of
much,
everybody
though.
else.
Not by much.
Not
The
that much,
NFL
but it's
and
still-
the
it's
NFL
still
is still they're still the top 10 programs
100%.
on those days. Not even close.
100%, but it's still less, right? Like it's that, like they could lose a lot and not even feel it, right? And that's the thing. I think that people are trying to find an answer, and some of these things are just there's just a lot. There's a lot of other stuff to watch. And the NBA is not a destination viewing either. Like
No, it's not.
That's the other problem.
No, I agree 100% with you. And you bring up some interesting things because I can call myself out. I think self-reflection is really important. I was a product of the 80s and 90s as well. I thought it was better basketball. I thought those guys could shoot better. I would rather see George Gervin, late 70s, early 80s. I'd rather see Alex English. I'd rather see guys like that shoot than some of the shots that are taken. So I think you're right about that, though. I really do. I think because we're not watching every single game like you are, but I would say 48 and a half 3-point attempts per game is a lot. And it's one thing if you're shooting them. It's another thing if you're making them. And there are certain teams that really aren't making them. And I think that's where a lot of people, it's almost like settling, I don't think there was a pace of, I don't look at length of games. So we just had this conversation. It's interesting, Keith, because Adam Silver was on Dan Patrick's show. I don't know if it was this week or last week, talking about the NBA and how they're possibly going from 12 minutes per quarter to 10 minutes per quarter. And he used an asinine example of Major League Baseball. When Major League Baseball's average game before they changed the rules was 3 hours and 6 minutes. The NBA average game is about 2.5 hours. It's still the fastest game. Why do you need to change it? Why are they always chasing? Why not just embrace who they are, accept who they are, and move forward and try to lessen some timeouts if you want by coaches and make fouls more important. Don't have as many fouls. Why do you have to change everything or in terms of the time and stuff?
I am 100% with you. I think changing to 10-minute quarters it's a joke. That would be the equivalent to Major League Baseball saying, games are only going to be 7 innings now.
Right.
Like you're fundamentally changing your game.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And I kind of got why in the COVID impacted seasons they did what they did with those and all of that stuff. But I'm saying, when we're in our regular environment. But I think here's the challenge for the NBA too is if you want to shorten the length of games, not the length of the game itself, but the length of the overall time investment. Yeah, like you said, timeouts, reviews, limit them to 60 seconds. If you can't figure it out in 60 seconds, call stands, we move on and we play. You know what? Mistakes happen. And if somebody wants to get down to the 100 million times magnified in to see who a ball went out of bounds off of, what are we doing anyway? Let's just keep moving on. So I think those are the things you can do. A lot of fans said, why don't you just simply start games on time? If you say a game tips at 8 o'clock, why is it tipping at 8:15? If that's your worry, there it is. There's 15 more minutes back. You shorten all this other stuff without changing the fundamentals of the game. Because the other thing is, you cut 8 minutes off a game, teams are going to completely approach roster building differently. They're going to say, hey, yeah, we can go super top heavy because you know what? We only need 6 or 7 guys to get through this. So let's go really top heavy, and then we'll, never play the other guys on the bench. You're going to change it too much for me that when there's a lot of more simple fixes to accomplish that. And it's having to fit everything into a 2-hour window too. That part, I'm just not sure why, that is. I'm sure they have, all kinds of metrics that tell them that's better, but it just seems like we're overdoing it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. If he's going to use the example of college basketball, I said, just go to 2 halves then instead of 4 quarters. They won't do that because of the TV money and the number of timeouts. Keith Smith from Spot Rack joining us here. You can follow him on Twitter at keithsmith.nba, and he's only got a minute left for us. But I did want to ask you in general, I want your opinion on why or why not the NBA is in a really good place right now in terms of the sports landscape.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why is that I don't know that the league's ever been more flush with talent across the board. And again, I think, we had super duper stars, when I was growing up, the guys that are all, the Hall of Fame legends. But if you look across the board, are there bad teams? Sure, there's bad teams, but there's always been bad teams. There's bad teams every year.
Mm-hmm.
But every team seems to have at least one or two guys that if they're not there already, you can kind of say, all right, they're going to be there in a year or two. And that's great. We're in a spot where there was real worries. LeBron's moving on eventually. Who's next? And now we've got, 7 or 8 guys to pick from that it feels pretty good about that. It's, here we go. And there's more of them coming, including in this next draft, and the draft after that. So that's a great place. Why is it not in great shape is, I think the NBA's single biggest fundamental problem is their partners who cover the game on TV, which, drives how a lot of the perception is of the league. They crap on it all the time. And that's, to me, that is a huge problem. When you have, your partners on ESPN and TNT and other places continually dumping on the game and saying it's not as good and these guys aren't actually good and these teams are all actually bad, even when they're winning. I mean, I watched, Kendrick Perkins, say the Celtics weren't good all of last season when they were historically good. It just doesn't make sense to me, because if you're going to continually, if you tell me, that TV show is really bad, it's really bad, you know what I'm not going to do? Watch that TV show.
Right.
And that's, I think a huge problem that the league has to fix. It has a real opportunity here as they bring in some new TV partners.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The way to fix that is don't watch that joke of a station. That's the way you fix it.
Yeah.
Because all that is, you know this, Keith. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. All that is sports talk radio on TV. And I am just trying to get clicks, and I'm just trying to get people to notice me and talk about me. I don't truly believe it. If that's how he believed last year, and I don't know because I don't watch it, but if that's how he believed, then that tells you about the credibility. He should not be doing it in the first place. Just because you played doesn't mean you know. I really appreciate all your knowledge. Thanks for the insight. I enjoyed the conversation very much. Have a great weekend and continued success. Thanks for the time, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. That's Keith Smith from Spot Rack. You can follow him on Twitter at Keith Smith at NBA, or NBA, I should say. Our thanks to you for your texts all morning long. A lot of fun. We'll be back with you Monday morning, 6 a.m. here across the great state of Michigan on the same station affiliates. Don't forget The Huge Show with Bill Simonson later on today, 3 until 6. Have a great Friday, everybody.
Huge here for the Michigan High School Athletic Association. You can stay up to date on the latest from Lansing 24/7 at MHSA